Hey guys, so we're going to go through installing the web server role and SQL Server on a remote web server, so a completely different virtual machine from our database machine, and go over how to connect that so that the SQL Server on this machine is connected to the database on our main database machine and replicates across the internet, and then still have this web server be able to parse the form data and populate it into that SQL database. So I started a little bit into my installation. I've already gone through Server Manager and installed the web server role, making sure that we selected the management tools and the CGI as well. And then I installed the web platform installer ahead of time as well, which you can see in my other tutorial, so we won't be missing out on too much. So again, we just did the SQL Server 2019 Express Edition download from the Microsoft website. It's installing a basic installation, and then we will install the SQL Server Management Studio, just like we did on the other ones, that we have a user interface to interact with. However, this would be the perfect time to not do the SQL Server Management Studio and just use the query language. You can create the connection without having to do all of the graphical user interface. But for demonstration purposes, I wanted to use the full-blown scenario. Alright, so we have installed it, and we're not going to worry about this connection string right now since we will be connecting to our remote server. So we're just going to go ahead and hit install SQL Server Management Studio. It'll take us to the web page. Scroll down and download the latest version. When it comes up, we will hit run. It will download the executable, and when that's done, we will install it. Alrighty, so it's downloaded the package. We're going to install it to the default directory again. And we will fast forward through the installation process. Alright, so once again, a successful install, and we're going to go ahead and restart our machine now. Alright, we are back online. And we'll go ahead and wait for our server manager to start up here. And so now we have our SQL Server 2019 Express installed with the SQL Server Management Studio and our IIS web server role. So next thing that we're going to do is make sure that we have the appropriate firewall rules set up in our firewall. So we'll go to search, type in firewall, and we want the firewall with advanced security here so we can apply some rules, add some rules. Go to inbound rules, create a new rule with a port rule for this, the SQL browser role. We are going to use a port rule, utilizes UDP on 1434. Hit next, and we want to allow the connection next over all of the different network types, and we will name this SQL browser again. And hit finish, and then again we need to create a rule to allow the management traffic, connection traffic, and all of that, and we will create a custom rule. Again, you can do it for the whole program, but it's a little bit narrower rule to do it for the service So instead of all programs, we will select services, scroll down, or click apply to this service, go ahead and scroll down to SQL Server. Right there. Hit OK. Hit next. Hit next. Hit next. Allow the connection over all of the network types. And we had named this one. Give me 1 second. SQL Server Database Engine. And hit finish. We've created our 2 rules to allow the SQL traffic to go in and out. Next, we want to go to our SQL Server Configuration Manager. So in the SQL Server Configuration Manager, we want to go to Network Configuration for the instance that we just installed, and again enable TCP/IP connections for incoming requests, and again the warning that it will not take effect until it's restarted. So we go up here to SQL Server Services and restart this SQL service. One other thing you notice here is the SQL Server browser is stopped and by default is not set to automatically run, and we want to go ahead and change that. So if you right click, there's not really much you can do here, so we'll just go ahead and go into services, which you can access through the control panel, or just type in services here. It will open up the services running on your computer. It popped it behind. So what I want to look for is that SQL Server browser, and you can see here it's disabled. I want to go ahead and bring that up. So I'm going to go to Properties and change this startup type here on the General tab to Automatic, and go ahead and hit OK, and it's going to change that to Automatic. And it's not going to automatically start now because I have already turned the computer on, it's already booted up and started the services that are automatic. But what I want to do is go ahead and start this, and you'll see it goes through its phase and now it is running. And this enables the server browser to communicate across your network and advertise the servers that are available on the network, which is going to enable us in SQL Server to connect to that server that we installed on our database machine. So I'll go ahead and close this and go ahead and refresh, and now you'll see that has updated and now it is running. And just for grins and giggles, we'll go ahead and restart this again just in case. It takes a couple of seconds. So now we are going to go ahead and open up SSMS, and while we're here I'm going to pin these to the taskbar for future use, that way they're easier to access. Alright, so before we get into this, I want to go ahead and bring up the database machine that we're in and show you how to register this database. So what we want to do is right click on this server instance up at the top, click register, and you'll notice here that we have our server name already brought up, this instance that we created on our database machine, and we want to specify Windows authentication if at all possible. Since these are all domain joined computers that we're working with, this will work. If you're working across the internet or something where you cannot use Windows authentication, then you can use SQL Server authentication, or if your SQL servers on Azure, you can utilize the Azure Active Directory authentication methods. But for our purposes, we're using the Windows authentication. And notice here the username is grayed out. We cannot change that. And what we want to pay attention to here is this registered server name. Before we click save, we can just click test and it'll show you that the connection was tested successfully. Now I've already done this, so I'm not going to hit save because it's going to tell me that it's already done. So let's go ahead and cancel out of that, but you would click save here to save this connection. And you can go in here into the connection properties as well and change the database. So for example, we can browse the server, and what it's going to tell you is it requires you to connect to the server, and then it's going to bring up the different databases you have on that server instance. But again, we've already done that. So we're not going to. And then you can select different protocols that it's advertising on. If you want to use TCP IP or named pipes or shared memory if it's a local machine. So we'll go ahead and minimize out of that. Okay, so now back on our web server role, I want to go ahead and type in the server name. So it was tier/db equals +01, and I can open up this options and change some of the settings. For example, under the connections properties, I can connect to a specific database, which to do that, you end up connecting and then it tells you which databases you can select from. So as you see, it connected here, and here's that web database. So we have done nothing on this SQL server. We've created no databases, no tables, no users, logins, primary key. We've done nothing on here. This is a fresh install. And so you can see that it is indeed referencing that database on the remote computer and pulling back the databases and populating them in here. So we can already see that our connection's going to go through, and I want to select this web database and hit OK, so that it's automatically going to go right into that. And we'll hit connect and watch as it populates everything up over here just like it looked on our database machine. If we open up this databases, we'll see our web database. If we do a new query, we can pull the information that's over there. Select all from, even the autocomplete's working. And we'll go ahead and hit F5 and run that. And as you can see, we've got all that information there that is in that database, and we've done nothing on this side. So that's all working great. We're connected in, replicating across the network, and able to query information, update information. It's all looking good. That's a second instance that I accidentally opened there. Alright, so everything is looking great there. One other thing, right now our SQL Server is only authenticating using Windows authentication. And what we can do if we want to enable it to use SQL Server authentication as well is go ahead and right click here and go to properties, and we want to go over to connections, or excuse me, security, and by default this will be selected for Windows authentication mode. If you want to enable both, you're just going to select this button here and hit OK. And that way, if you want to use a username and login to access this database, you can do it that way. So that's called mixed authentication for SQL Server 2019. Alright, so now that we've set up our SQL Server 2019, we're going to go ahead and continue our web server role. So we're going to go back to Server Manager, or open up IIS however you're used to doing it. And again, I'm going to pin this to the taskbar so that it's easier to access, and go here to the web page, and you'll see it already installed the Common Gateway interface. The web platform installer I had installed before I started this video. So if you missed that, go ahead and visit my first videos and we go over how to install those, and then you can catch back up to here. But otherwise, we'll just continue from that place on. One thing that I did is I created a share between my virtual machines, which this is going to be a very good way for you, instead of having to download the files every time you want to do this. You can create a share folder through your RDP, or really the best way to do this is to create a image for your server 2016 that includes these applications already installed. And Microsoft provides services that will stage your installations in an image so that you can boot off an image and it will install everything. And so that would be the faster way to do all this. But as you can see, I've created shares to my local computer. And we'll go ahead and right off the bat, we have the web pages on that drive. And so I'll just go ahead and minimize this, and in my local, or in the virtual machine, I want to go to C initpub www root, and we'll just go ahead and create a shortcut on the desktop to access this, and go ahead and drag that over to the desktop, and we can close that. And now I can open this up and go ahead and copy all of my web page files straight over. Go ahead and just paste those. Alright, so now those files are here locally on my machine, and so if I were to open up Internet Explorer, go to localhost, I'm going to see all those web pages right on my local host. So if this, being my backup web server, has these files locally, when it is pinged to serve up these web pages, then it already has them all good to go. And you'll navigate to this guest book here, which is what we are setting up to query into our SQL Server. It's already set up and ready to go. Even this action page is spun up, and we're actually going to modify that here in a little bit to customize it for this specific machine. As you can see here, I've navigated again to this share where I have all of the PHP files downloaded into one location that I can then install from. And so let's go ahead and run through that. So the first thing that we've already done is this web platform installer, and what I want to install next is the PHP manager for IIS. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy this file to my desktop, just like I was downloading it from the web page, but I've already downloaded it, and so now I'm just simply copying and pasting it right over. It's downloaded. We'll go ahead and install this using the defaults again, and it's installing PHP Manager. We'll go ahead and close. That's now done. If we go into IIS and refresh it, then we're going to see it pop up. There we go. We got PHP Manager in there. Alright, next we are going to install PHP. Again, the same thing here. I have this PHP version 7.4 non-thread safe already downloaded in there, so I'm just going to copy that to my local desktop as well. And once that is downloaded, again, we're going to change this target folder where it's going to install or extract all of these files to, and we want to create it right here in the root C drive, and we will create our folder called PHP and go ahead and extract everything into that to CPHP. Extract. And it'll pop it up here so we can see the folders in CPHP. All of our dynamic link libraries, we scroll down the INIs, the CGI that we need to map, everything's all right here in our PHP, in our PHP folder. So let's go ahead and close that, and next. Next thing that we're going to do is go here to IIS, open up PHP Manager, and you'll see nothing's available. It's not recognizing the PHP that we've installed. So what we're going to do is register a new PHP version and navigate to C PHP and this CGI right here. Move this up so you can see PHP CGI, hit open, hit OK, and now we have our new PHP version 7.4.12, and you'll see the extensions that are installed due to that. And so we'll go through it, look at our enabled ones here, and then the disabled ones that we have here. And as we go to install our extensions and the drivers that we need, then we'll go ahead and enable those. One thing that we can enable right now is this ODBC, the Open Database, and go ahead and enable that because we will need that driver to handle our SQL requests. Alright, next we want to go check our handler mappings, and we do not see any of those fast CGIs on here, so we want to go ahead and add a module mapping. That star.php, the module will be the fast CGI or CGI module. Go ahead and navigate here. Again, remember, by default it's looking at these extensions. We want to look for the .exe, map it to this php-cgi, hit open, name it fast CGI, whatever you want to make sure that it's memorable. Hit yes, and now we have enabled that and mapped it to that. Alright, now we'll go check our default documents. Again, navigate to this home page for your web server role. Go to default document, and we're looking to make sure this index.html is in there, and then we want to go ahead and move that up since our web pages are coded in HTML. Alright, there we go. So we got index.html at the top of the list, followed by index.php. Now, one thing to note is inside this www root, we already have that info.php that we created. Just to refresh your memory, we'll go ahead and edit that here in Notepad so you can see what it consists of. It's simply just this bit of PHP code here, so that when you request this file, it's going to return the information that it gathers by executing that on the server side. So that's already in there. If it is not, make sure that you create this file and save it as info.php in your www root folder there so that you can call that. Next, we're going to go back here and check on our PHP manager and make sure that there's no configurations that are going to mess with our instance here. So we'll go ahead and view recommendations. Again, this one here is going to be expected because we have manually moved that to meet our requirements. If you want to change something or accept the recommended configurations, you can select that and hit OK, and it's going to go ahead and fix that for you. Next up on our list is WinCache. Again, this is a pretty standard extension that speeds up the process of executing these files by caching certain things so that it can call on them more quickly. So we'll go here to our WinCache and go ahead and copy that over to our desktop and execute that once it's downloaded, and browse to that php/extensions folder where our dynamic link libraries are living. So it will extract to there, follow the instructions in the README. What that's essentially going to tell you to do is go into PHP Manager by going here to enable or disable an extension. And we'll scroll down and we want to find that WinCache. Go ahead and right click and enable that. Make sure there's no more populated in here that we need. And that's it for that. So now we're going to move on to installing the SQL Server extensions so that our web server IIS knows how to deal with the PHP requests over to SQL Server and handle it through the CGI. Though before we do get into that, we do want to verify that our installation is working here. And so we're going to open up our Internet Explorer. I'm going to open up a different tab here and navigate to the localhost/info.php file that we created. And we want to see this beautiful purple screen here, which lets us know that PHP is now working in our IIS web server. I'll go ahead and expand this and scroll down, and what we are not seeing is the SQL Server extensions in here, so it's all alphabetical. And we do not see any of the SQL Server. It should appear right here before standard. And we do see WinCache, so we know that that's good. We see ODBC, the PDO, ODBC, and ODBC here, so we know that's good. Again, that is not something that you want to have in your directory in a production environment, so make sure you delete that file before you put this out to the internet. Okay, so next step will be getting the DLLs, and again this is from that PECL web page where we navigated to the PHP 7.4 non-thread safe. And if you're not if you don't know what I'm talking about, make sure that you watch my initial video on how to install this on your database server so that you can see me work through these step by step. And then make sure you keep those files and copy them to a USB or a repository or somewhere that you can have easy access to them, so that you can simply execute it from a shared drive or a USB or whatever, like I'm doing. So what we're looking for is this SQL Server 5.9 7.4. So this is SQL version, or PHP version 7.4 non-thread safe drivers for SQL Server. So copy this over, and again we're going to extract those to that PHP extensions folder. Browse, go here to C PHP extensions and select folder, extract. And now if you scroll down, you're going to see your WinCache and these PHP SQL Server drivers now that we can enable. So again, we'll go here to PHP Manager, go ahead and enable or disable an extension and find those SQL Server extensions that we want to enable right here. Enable. So that's great. So we're going to go back here to our PHP info page. I want to click refresh, and I want to look for the SQL Server in here now to make sure that we have compatibility and that our PHP is now handling these queries, these requests. So now, if everything is good to go, then we should now be able to have users insert their information into our form page and submit it and go to our page. But we are going to need to change our action page PHP file, which is what that form points to when you click submit. So we'll go ahead and minimize all of this, close this, hit cancel on that, and go here to our root folder for our web and go to this action page, and I want to open it with Notepad so that we can edit it. Okay, so as you can see, this is not pointing to the database that we created, that database instance, so we want to point it to that tier database. Even though we're here on our Web 2 virtual machine, we're pointing it over to the tier DB SQL Express and utilizing the same connection information and the same query information since it's off of the same form. And we're just going to go ahead and go here to our form page, type in some information, type in a fake birthday, make it her, select a few, put in some test data here. We're just selecting random stuff. And we're probably not going to see it work right off the bat because we are going to have to create our access to manipulate that form on there. So we're going to wait for this error response, and it's telling us error locating the server instance, and I believe that's because I did not put this 01 in here. So go ahead and save that, resubmit that form. Actually, everything went just peachy keen, which is kind of surprising. You never almost expect these things to work out right off the bat. So this is great. The connection established is exactly what we want to see. That means that our IIS user, how we've authenticated into IIS, has access to our database to create those database entries and query that. So let's go ahead and hop over here to SQL Server, and we will do a new query on web, and just go ahead and select all from web, and we can tab to autocomplete that, run F5 to execute, and this is great. We have this new entry here, this information that we just input, and everything worked right off the bat. So it doesn't get much better than that. If you guys have any questions, if you run any issues that you could use help in, go ahead and message me and I'll try and get back with you. Throw it in the comments. There might be other users that have answers to your questions. And if you like this tutorial, make sure you please like and subscribe and share it with your friends. Thank you very much. Have a great day. So we'll go ahead and open that up and look at the network configuration. And again, by default, TCP/IP is disabled, so we're going to go ahead and enable that and enable named pipes so that we can access it through those means. And what I want to do is double click TCP/IP now and look at IP addresses. And this is the local host IP address, and we want to create a static port. So if we scroll down to IP all, there's no dynamic ports that's listening on right now and no TCP ports. So we want to create a custom port.